The Boston Celtics are streaking, and a look at the week ahead coming up here on Green with Envy. What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Will Weir checking in, riding shotgun with me today. I got my homie Adam Taylor. Adam, what's popping?
Yo, what's good, man? What's good? I'm very happy. 5-game win streak right now. They got the Grizzlies tonight at the time of recording. I know that we should be beating the Grizzlies. They're in Memphis. There's no Marcus Smart.
Let's hope. Greg and I will have this covered. If you're listening on the podcast version, you already know Greg and I have this covered. If you're listening on YouTube, go down to the game recaps. Greg and I will have you covered with whatever happens. But as you're saying, Adam, it's disappointing to not have Marcus Smart in this game, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would have liked to have seen Marcus Smart play. I do think that when we eventually see him play, he's going to have a big time Marcus Smart game. I think there'll be some bad moments for him, some big moments for him. But I do have one.
Wait, you mean that's just the Marcus Smart experience?
That's what I said. We'll have a big Marcus Smart game. I do have one like overarching thought about the entire thing though, and I just wanted to share that with everybody right now.
We're going streaking!
Okay, that's the usage. That's all we can use. But I needed to add that in because otherwise, you know.
Well, we talked about movies a little bit in the last podcast. I'll tell you this. I think Old School is probably
top 5.
I think it might be my favorite comedic movie of all time. I think it might be. I don't know if this is like high school Will talking, high school college Will would have easily put this number 1. I need to rewatch. I haven't rewatched it in a while. What were your thoughts on a more recent rewatch of Old School?
I watch it very consistently, dude. It's one of my most watched comedy films. One, it's got Alicia Cuthbert in. 2, and
is that a little celebrity crush of Adam?
Long time,
long standing. Okay,
yeah. And 2, it's just funny as fuck. Like, I think that was when there was like a period of time, right, where Will Ferrell was going through like just crushing it on every movie he did. You had like Step Brothers, like Prime, and I'm a big Vince Vaughn guy. I just find his like dry humor funny. So I just thought it was a really good cast. One of my favorite comedies of all time, top 5. I struggle to put things 1 through 5 when I'm doing stuff like movies because I think they're so fluid.
Yeah,
like have you seen what's that one with all the kids? And it's like American Pie, but with kids, and they're all swearing all the time and stuff. And when they released the movie, they were too young to go and watch the movie because of how the age rating.
This sounds very
familiar. Is it Good Boys?
Something I never saw it, but I know what you're talking about. I think that is what it is.
Yeah, Good Boys, like that. Like it's fluid because up until 2019 when it come out, excuse me.
Is that movie good?
I found it really funny, and I think a lot of it's the shock value. Okay. Like there's a scene in it where he's got one of the main characters, the little lad, has got some anal beads, but he thinks it's a necklace, and and because it's anal, he thinks the brand is anal, so he gives them to a girl that he's trying to date. Like, here's a nice necklace. It's from anal. And she's like putting it around the neck and sniffing it like why?
Like thinking it's like Chanel instead of
exactly, dude. Like and she puts it around the neck and she can smell the shit. And she's like, why does it smell? He's like, I don't know, but it's anal. It's expensive. So, and they find there's another scene like they find a sex doll and they think it's a CPR doll, so they start trying to learn how to give mouth to mouth.
The amount of humor you can get from the blissful ignorance of kids in comedy is perfect. It's so good. It's like having a little kid swear, like even smaller than what you're saying. Seriously? Like I know it's probably not great parenting, but anytime I see either a friend of mine with a little kid or just it could be on TV, it doesn't have to be like a friend of ours, but like if you get like a 5-year-old to say shit or something, like it's hilarious. Like it's never not funny. It's always funny. It's gold.
And this is what it is, right? Like to me, this film is, and it's nothing like American Pie. Like obviously they're not trying to go out and get laid or anything like that. And I know that, Gen Z aren't really a big fan of American Pie anyway, but just in terms of like shock value, stupidity, kind of like cultural relevancy and longevity of the comedy that's in it, like because it's so broad. It's top 5 for me because it's just funny. Same as like what's the other one I like with Kiss My Anthea? What's that one?
With which one?
Role Models.
Oh, Models. That's in that same genre. Yeah. That's a perfect one. I like Role Models as well. Role Models is actually probably a little bit underrated. Big fan of Paul Rudd. My household, very big fan. You mentioned your kind of celebrity crush. That's my fiance's celebrity crush is Paul Rudd. I know that if he somehow comes into Austin, Texas, there's a chance your boy's taking a backseat.
Oh man, I'm sorry. Me and you will just deal with him. He was in Wales not too long ago, dude.
We'll call Draymond Green. We'll put him in a chokehold.
He was in Wales not too long ago, Paul Rudd.
Well, I mean, I could believe that. Was he promoting a movie or just chilling?
No, because Ryan Reynolds owns a soccer
because of the Wrexham. Because of Wrexham.
Yeah,
okay.
It was like
that makes sense.
It was like going around all the Facebook, like, yo, Paul Rudd's at a Wrexham game. He's in the local bar with all the guys just buying rounds. I'm like, what the fuck is Ant-Man doing in a fucking bar in Wales?
Hey man, you get celebrity owners for your sports teams. They bring everybody out. I was watching that Wrexham documentary for a bit, and they always get people to come out there, man.
See, I'm just like, nah, it's soccer. I couldn't give a shit.
Yeah, it's okay. It's not bad. It's not bad. I don't mind. It's sports and it's it's entertaining. So, I like It's Always Sunny. I think Ryan Reynolds. I actually just I started watching Christmas movies last night. So that 'tis the season. Watched some new one from a year or two ago, actually with Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds.
I've seen it advertised. Is it any good? It's like a musical type thing.
I didn't even realize it was a musical until it started. Yeah, it's a little long. It's it's a 6 out of 10. But during the holiday season, we just put up our Christmas tree last night. So like. It's it's going to trickle in. There's a bunch of holiday movies that I've seen a million times. So this was just like whatever. Let's try a new one. And
what's your favorite?
Sometimes I miss.
Okay, we'll talk basketball after this.
Yeah.
What's your favorite bad Christmas movie?
Favorite bad Christmas movie. Do you have one that's off the top of your head while I think about it?
Yeah, mine's Jingle All. Is it Jingle All the Way?
Yeah, Jingle All the Way is a pretty good one. Yeah, that's a pretty good one.
That's my favorite bad Christmas movie. Same as my favorite bad action movie is Last Action Hero with Arnie.
So it's just a bad movie legend, which is Arnold Schwarzenegger. I think that works. Yeah, I don't know if I have. There definitely is one, but I'm blanking on it right now. I'll come back. We'll circle back to this. We got a whole holiday season to fill here.
Yeah,
so I'll circle back with
whole
my
segment on Christmas Chronicles to discuss. I love Christmas Chronicles.
There you go. That's all coming up here. But for now, like you said, let's talk some basketball. Let's swing it back here. We mentioned at the top, Celtics are streaking. Greg and I will cover where we're at after the Memphis game here on the front half of the podcast. But Adam, right now, as we're recording on Sunday before that Memphis game, Celtics on a 5-game win streak right now. First team in the NBA to crack those double-digit wins. And the interesting part that I want us to kind of dig into here is it feels like they're doing it in different ways. Yes, they're number 1 in the league in offensive rating. Yes, they're tied for number 1 in defensive rating. Adam, can you name that team they're tied with?
Probably the Timberwolves off the top of my head.
That would be a good guess. They're number 2, the Orlando Magic. The Orlando Magic, 106.5 with their defensive
rating. That's how you
rating.
know it's so early in the season when the Orlando Magic are top as a defensive.
I know. The Celtics play the Magic in-season tournament game coming up on Friday. Celtics Magic. So we'll talk about them later.
I'm sorry, what was it?
It was the in-season tournament, Adam. Well done, Adam. Well done. You didn't miss a beat right there. I love that. I do appreciate you jumping in with that. But let's look at this win streak here, Adam. How are the Celtics getting it done? Tell me about it.
So one of the first things for me is the catch and shoot game. I think that it's very underrated how high so many of the guys are shooting from catch and shoot. If anyone follows me on social media, they would have seen me put this out yesterday. I'm not going to share my screen. Okay, so we've got 5 players shooting above 40% on catch and shoot threes for the season. Can you tell me who those 5 are? And first of all, did you see the tweet?
I saw the tweet. I don't necessarily know if I remember it. So let's see if I can do this off the top of my head. So we got 5 guys. So Sam Hauser better be on this list because
Sam Hauser is on this list.
Yeah. He's got to be on that list.
Though, remember,
that's true. Well, then again, with Sam Hauser, he should be on that list. That makes
but I just want to preface that.
I got you. So let's go with Kristaps Porzingis for this.
That's number 2.
I feel like Derek White should be on this list.
That's number 3.
It's number 3. Can I get a Jaylen Brown?
It's number 4.
All right. We got one more. Oh man, do I go Jason Tatum or do I go Drew Holiday or do I? It's not Al Horford. It's not Al Horford's turned around the last 2 games. He's not quite there yet. Let's go with Jason Tatum for the last spot.
That is correct. Yep, and Drew Holiday is in the high 30s.
All right, so just on the fringes, just on the fringes.
But I feel like that's a big part of it, right? Because what we're seeing is the Celtics sometimes they go cold off dribble pull-ups, they go cold off self-created threes. But what they're doing is they're consistently knocking down catch and shoot ones because, like, if you go back to that Toronto game from the other night, when the Celtics weren't firing, you had Al Horford getting paint touches, drawing 2, kicking the ball out, and that's when your catch and shoot opportunities are coming from. When it's a wide open shot or a very open shot, maybe the ball's rotated twice, it's found you, you've got a defender 4 or 5 steps away thinking, shit, I need to get there. It's just easier. So that's to me, that's a big part of what's kept this winning streak alive, but it's definitely not the only part.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think the interesting thing is that we could probably find multiple different things as to what's happening with this team, because this team has won in a multitude of ways. They've blown out several teams. I think the game against Toronto the other night was it's kind of inconsistent. I want to say it was ugly. I think it was just inconsistent, right? Like I think there was times that the Celtics didn't necessarily get downhill. Jason Tatum being the biggest example of this, right? 1 of 11 from 3, didn't get to the free throw line in that game, which, by the way, this is something that I just started to realize in that game. I didn't realize how bad Jason Tatum is in Toronto. Is that something that has stood out to you over his career?
I've never looked, to be honest.
So I have the numbers here because I remember as I was watching, like, this feels kind of, have I seen this movie before? Has this happened before with Jason Tatum? And I know while I was out, you did a little football talk with Greg. You got your Patriots Mac Jones talk in there, and going back to the tried. Hey, I appreciate the effort. So going back in the day, Tom Brady was notorious for not always, but being inconsistent in his play when they went to Miami. Why? I don't know. It really was one of those things that was hard to figure out. And Toronto might be Jason Tatum's Miami. So for his career, he actually only averages 16.5 points, 6.9 rebounds, 3.3 assists, shoots 32% from 3. And in 10 games, he's actually struggled to break getting to the free throw line more than 5 times. He's only broken getting to the free throw line more than 5 times once in 10 games in his entire career in Toronto.
Is this on StatMuse? Are you on StatMuse?
I am on StatMuse right now.
Can you have a look what it's like in Minnesota? I've got a theory. I just want to double check.
Take a look. But yeah, it was something that as I was watching, it was, and like, I don't know, like I said, I don't know if we're going with that this might be a, cold weather thing. I was trying to figure it out because as Tatum was just ice cold in that game, it was just something that was really oddly sticking out. So if you look at him in Minnesota here, less of a sample size. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Only half the amount of games. Makes sense. 23.2 points, 8.8 rebounds. Shoots only 28% from the 3-point line. Does still get to the line 7.3 times versus I think it's like 2.5 when he's against the Raptors.
So it's not the weather. Because
obviously that's where I thought that theory was going.
Yeah, because I don't know what the weather's like in St. Louis. Like, is it warm? Is it cold? Is it normal?
It has multiple seasons. So
okay,
it's not necessarily the coldest place. It's certainly not going to be a Northeast or a Chicago type cold.
Yeah.
But they get all the seasons there. So it is just an interesting anomaly that this tends to be a place where Jason Tatum struggles. But
maybe it's just with Drake.
That was the other part I was thinking about. Maybe Toronto's supposed to be a pretty fun city. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
Maybe it could just be Tatum hanging out with Drake too much. But but it did lead me to start thinking, like you said, the Celtics are finding different ways to win. And so this year, they've had multiple games where they've lost either the field goal or the 3-point percentage battle in that game. And in years past, they're not winning those games, but they've got wins at the Raptors, at the Knicks, versus the Heat, versus the Nets, in which they lost that particular battle that night. And they're still finding other ways to win. And it's becoming a really impressive calling card of this team, of the way that they can sacrifice, shift, and kind of manipulate whatever it is they need to do on that particular night to go ahead and get a win.
Yeah, a lot of it's just the star players, primarily Tatum and Brown. But obviously you can You can throw in Kristaps, you can throw in Drew, you can throw in White, however many you want to put into this pool, it really doesn't make a difference. Their shot profiles just seem to be so much more diverse this season compared to what we've seen previously. When against the Raptors, when they were throwing to at Tatum for posting up and Tatum went back to kind of being on the perimeter trying to drive, it was Brown that was giving you a post presence. When they were really stopping the rip throughs off the catch, you had Derek White in the dunker spot operating as kind of like a dunker spot playmaker. At that one play, everybody pointed out where the ball went round. Derek White got it, jumped
before halftime.
Yeah, kicked it back out. He was an inverted dunker spot guy. So it's as you said, it's molding. It's kind of fluid. It's that type of like evolution within the game that we're seeing. It's making them so hard to predict because one moment you have got a Drew Holiday posting you up or a Derek White in the dunker. The next moment you see Kristaps Porzingis come off a flare screen and now he's in the corner stretching out the defense across the baseline, allowing Tatum to come off a rip screen and dunk. Like there's so many moving parts to this. And I do think that as you look down the roster and we start to go to more single skill guys, there's a reason why we're seeing like it was an 8-man rotation in Toronto. It was a 9-man rotation the game before. We're not really seeing the Brissetts and the Stevens.
Mm-hmm.
We're not seeing those guys really get minutes. He seems to be the guy that's in and out of the rotation a bit more because of the scoring punch. And I think that is because Mazzulla is really favoring guys that can blend with what's needed at that moment in time. Even Peyton Pritchard is doing a good job, even though he might be struggling, but he's finding ways to impact the game where you can have him as a ball handler that's going to threaten to shoot around the rim, to draw to, and then kick it because he's such a willing passer out of that like Nash dribble. That to me, as you said, it's the calling card, but it is the diverse shot profile that's really making teams struggle.
Man, I really want to see Peyton Pritchard start knockdown. So he got some really wide open looks. I think it is too. It's some really open looks. I don't want to belabor that point though, because we've talked about that too much.
Yeah, no, it's coming. I'm staying positive.
It is what it is. I'm with you. I think it's coming too. I think we've seen enough body of work that it's going to come. But something else that I wanted to talk about here that I think stood out to me a little bit and I want to start with at the beginning of the year when I was kind of assessing what I think might happen with this team, right? I didn't think they were going to be a very good rebounding team. Did you think they would be a good rebounding team before the year started? We'll talk about where it's now. But
I was expecting maybe by the end of the season we'll see them in the top 10 for defensive rebounding, but I was like 9th, maybe
not what we're seeing right now, right? Like so that's where I was at too, right? Like not they weren't going to be the bottom of the league when you have Tatum's a beast. Porzingis is 7'3". You have too many guys that are willing to rebound. I think the biggest thing has been I didn't expect Drew Holiday to rebound the way that he's rebounded. That has been a surprise. He's averaging over 7 rebounds a game right now, nearly 7.5 rebounds. But the Celtics as a team, we talked about them and the Magic being tied for the lead in defensive rating, defensive rebounds. Celtics are number 1 in the league in defensive rebound percent. They're number 3 in the league right now. Like that is not something that I expected out of this team. But when you look at, the top 5 of guys, and we keep talking about, this top 5, 6 Celtics have. I mean, you've got Jason Tatum, 8.7 rebounds, Drew Holiday, 7.6. I shortchanged him. He is over 7.5, 7.6 rebounds for Drew Holiday, 6.7 for Kristaps, 6 a game in only 24 minutes for Al Horford, 5 for Jaylen Brown, 3.7 for Derek White. And so you just have collectively, a group of guys that are really hitting the glass. And I thought that was going to be an area that I was absolutely looking for to be a weak spot for this team and an area that they could get, taken advantage of. And it's become it's a massive strength for them this, 12 games into the season. And I just wasn't expecting that.
I mean, to piggyback off that, it goes one step further. It's not just the defensive rebounding, and obviously that's incredibly important for the obvious reasons. You kill an offensive possession, you reset your offense and stuff. But they're also 3rd in the league in opponents' second points allowed. So even when teams are getting those offensive boards, Boston are swarming. And I think because they're rebounding by committee, because you've got a 7'3" guy protecting the rim, you've got a Jason Tatum or a Jaylen Brown rotating over with athleticism and length, and then you have guards like Drew and White that play physical, those second chance points are really difficult to come by because if you try and put it straight back up, there's a hand in your face. You kick it out to the free, and you've got whoever just charging down at you. And the Celtics have been hitting some perimeter blocks throughout the season as well. So I think when you look at it as a whole in terms of rebounding and limiting second chance opportunities, they're really going hand in hand. There's a bonus point for you if you know who's first in opponent's second points allowed.
Unfortunately, I have it pulled up here, so I do know the answer to that question. So yeah, Celtics Celtics third, Magic second, Knicks first in the opponent second.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm going to upload a clip while we talk, just to show exactly what I mean by having that rim presence after a team gets the offensive rebound.
Yeah, and it's like I said, with the Celtics team, the Joe Mazzulla talked about it, right? In the preseason. Let's get back to defense. Let's get back to what I messed up on. Like, he took accountability. I messed up. I did not preach about the defensive end. And you're seeing this team really fully committed to it. And, as we're looking at just the streak that they're on right now, Adam, I mean, they've blown a couple teams out here, but, they've held opponents to 107, 94, 98, 107, 105. Like, in the modern NBA, if you're holding teams consistently under 110, and especially under 100, like, that tells you how connected and how in tune your defense is on a night-to-night basis.
It's just, how can I put this? It feels like we're watching an Ime Udoka defensive system being able to hold teams so low on points and grind out defensive possessions, but with the Joe Mazzulla flair of swarming, and like, it feels like we're seeing. Last season, I felt like Joe assumed the defense was there already and just focused on.
I mean, he said as much. He to his credit, he said that, yeah.
And now you come back this year, and it feels like not only has he got them buying back into what worked on that NBA Finals season, but he's also added his own flair. He's added some Cassell ideas into it, and now we're seeing such a like the 2-1-2 press that feels like it. I don't feel like that was a Mazzulla call. I do feel like that might have been Cassell or Lee. Do you know what I mean? Kind of bringing that in with them and being like, hey, just to run down the clock. I'm not expecting the press to force turnovers. I'm expecting it to be just 11 seconds.
Make them start their offense at 12 instead of 17.
Yeah, exactly. And now you're in a rush to get things going. Right. I just want to point this video out a second. So what we'll see is Porzingis get a block on Grady Dick, boom. But then we get the second chance opportunity here, and look, Hauser's straight there. You've got Porzingis in your face, and he forces the shot alteration. And I feel like that is part of the whole defense in itself. Like, you've got a big man in Porzingis that plays drop. Your system around Porzingis is drop, but it's so fluid that he can snap out of that and become a perimeter defender. And he's really good at keeping in front of his man. His footwork's good. Grady Dick is meant to be, a high-level prospect. He's a blue-collar prospect. And it's not really working for him trying to drive on Porzingis. Then all of a sudden you've got Hauser come in and pick up a bigger guy. It just seems like it's all like interchangeable and it's interlocking. And that's a big part of it as well, because you've heard me say this a million times. You can have a bad shooting night and you're fucked. But if your effort is there on defense, on an elite defense every single game, then you've always got something you can fall back on, and you will always be in with a chance of winning at the end of it. It might be a tight game like it was in Toronto, but you're always going to be there or thereabouts by the time you're down into the clutch.
And that's where I think this team is at. Like, I think it's very, even in the games the Celtics have lost, obviously they've been very tight. I think it's going to be hard to blow this team out. Like, I think it's going to be very rare that this team gets blown out unless they completely just have, one of those nights from last year where it was just very clear, oh, they didn't show up tonight. We might as well cancel the podcast. There's no game recap. They didn't show up, unless they have one of those type of nights, which we haven't seen out of this team yet. And they've had the opportunity. They've had guys, the old Doc Rivers thing. I'd rather have everybody with their players, because as soon as you hear, player X, whoever the other team's best player is out, you see them, pull their foot off the gas, right? And we saw that with Tyrese Halliburton, earlier this year, and the Celtics put up 155 points. They certainly did not slow up when they heard there was no Tyrese Halliburton. So, I think as long as the Celtics don't have those type of breakdowns, it's gonna be near impossible for teams to have games where they can run away from the Celtics team.
Yeah, I feel like part of that's maturity, right? Like, in years past, maybe the younger guys did go out before a Miami game or ahead of a Memphis game when they're in Tennessee. Maybe they do hit the clubs the night before, and then they're coming in a bit like, as I've always said, a bit tender, a bit like, oh shit, why is my head like the way it is, a bit woozy. Now everyone's a little bit older. Like, Brown's 27. Tatum's what, 25? Horford's nearly 87.
You added Holiday's 33. You know, you got a little bit older presence there, so certainly that you know could be part of it. And I think it's part of just that, you know, that winning process, right? Like it takes time to understand these things and how it all works, not just night to night, but how does it work over 6 months, basically, right? 6, 7, 8 months as you go through this grind of a season and knowing when to pick your spots, when you're going to, you know, do whatever it might be, whether it's on the court or off court that I'm talking about, you know, you kind of can pick your moments to do that. With that, Adam, let's take a quick look here just at the week ahead for the Celtics. So Greg and I will cover whatever happens in that Memphis game here. If you're listening to the audio version or if you're watching us here on YouTube, game recaps, go scroll down. You can go ahead and check out what is going on or what happened, I should say, in that Memphis game. This is going to be a back-to-back. Monday night, they're at Charlotte. Wednesday, Celtics at home. First time we'll get to see the matchup of what was supposed to be the two Titans of the East clashing on their way to the Eastern Conference Finals. They'll take on Dame, Giannis, and the Milwaukee Bucks on Wednesday at home. And then, of course, on Friday, you know what it is, Adam. It's that time again.
Wait, it comes back.
In-season tournament Friday. I know we gotta, dude. Honestly, the first time you played it, it was just running through my head. I was like, you were talking whatever we transitioned to at that point, and the theme music was still playing in my head. But Orlando for the in-season tournament on Friday. But you know, Adam, like as the team's streaking right now, and you look at the week ahead, you would think, and like I said, we'll know by the time this is out. Memphis, they're just decimated with injuries. Ja Morant still suspended. Just a really rough start to the Memphis season. You would think the Celtics would keep streaking. Charlotte, a little bit more fight to them, but at the same time, it's, you know, that's been a team the Celtics have really dominated over the last couple of years. I'm expecting that to not have too much resistance, but then you get to the back end of this week, and that's where it gets really interesting. And you look at specifically, obviously, Milwaukee on Wednesday, Orlando, who we've already talked about having a surprisingly good defense early in the season, you know, playing them on Friday on the road. But, you know, starting with Milwaukee, you know, this is supposed to be the two best teams. Now, I think Philly's making a case that, hey, don't forget about us. And, you know, you and Greg talked about them last week about them being another team that could be in this top tier of the East mix. But with Milwaukee, you know, Dame and Giannis finally starting to kind of find a rhythm here. They're 9-4, but the two of them, you can, if you've had a chance to tune into some of theirs, I've seen more highlights than I've seen full games of Milwaukee at this point, but it does seem like they're starting to get their footing beneath them a little bit.
Yeah, I think that the concern was never about whether or not Dame and Giannis figure shit out. The concern was about, is the depth there? Right, like the depth that they have is solid, but it's also old. Brook Lopez is old. Chris Middleton has been dealing with injuries for a few seasons at this point.
He's the key. That's the key for me for their entire team. Like,
and I feel like we're at a point now where you kind of like obviously not at the same level of stardom. So just in terms of availability, Chris Middleton to the Bucks is Anthony Davis to the Lakers.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, unlocks everything else that they're trying to do, but cannot be relied upon.
Can't be relied upon. Yeah. Exactly. You don't know if he's going to be there. I mean, I don't know if he's still on that weird minutes restriction. You know, I've checked a few box scores and I'm like, man, he only played 20 minutes again tonight, you know? Like, and without Middleton being very close to the Chris Middleton, who was for years, it was a legitimate argument. Who's better, Jaylen Brown or Chris Middleton? That was a very legitimate argument. And I think there's, for a time, as Jaylen was continuing his ascent to, you know, where he is within the NBA hierarchy, like there was certainly a time where it's, you know, it's Middleton. Middleton was the answer. And, you know, injuries over the last couple of years. And this was the issue for Drew Holiday when he was in Milwaukee, right? Middleton wasn't there. And so now Drew, who we've seen in spurts, can be a really, really dynamic, you know, offensive player, but he was asked to be the number 2. He's the number 4 on the Celtics now, right? At times, maybe even number 5, or can be anywhere between that spectrum of 3 to 5 as your offensive guy. And he had to be the number 2 way too often in Milwaukee. And even with Dame there, it feels like the Bucks season is really going to be all about what Chris Middleton brings and just who Chris Middleton is at this point.
Yeah, and I feel like when you're looking at what Chris Middleton brings, it's very hard to not expect him to be the key, because you're looking at other guys on that roster like, hey, Bobby Portis is one of your most important players. Now, Bobby Portis is stepping into he's a great role player on a contending team. He brings physicality, he can space the floor, he can do a lot of different things. But if he's having to step into like a third option role, or kind of be interchangeable in that third option role, then you're kind of screwed. And that's where Chris Middleton's value really is, because they don't have enough behind him to be able to feel confident with somebody stepping in for him. Do you know what I mean? Everybody
there's too big of a talent gap to go from Dame, Giannis, and then straight down to Portis. Brook Lopez and Portis, right? Yeah. Like they need Middleton.
And that's no diss Portis, right? I think he's a really important player for any contending team that can find minutes for him. I just think that if you look at Boston, and we've seen it, Jaylen Brown, Kristaps Porzingis out, no problem. Drew steps up to a next step up. White steps up. Al Horford steps in. Everybody moves up a spot, and everything just keeps on moving. Whereas with Milwaukee, it's like, okay, you have the Dame and Giannis, but where's the floor spacing that opens up that pick and roll? You cannot run a spread pick and roll if nobody else there is really a high level 3-point threat outside of Brook Lopez.
Yeah, and Middleton's not, an all defensive NBA guy, but he is a two-way guy. I think he's a guy that, at least at his best, I would define him as a two-way guy. And in the example you gave with the Celtics, everybody plays two ways, right? Dame is going to be a one side of the ball type of guy. Brook Lopez is going to lean more to the defensive side.
At this point.
That's the thing, right? Is that there's too many, like when the more that you have a subsection of guys that play one side of the ball more than the other side of the ball, you need that connectivity. You need someone to bridge that gap. And Middleton does that, I think, on both sides of the ball for them, even just with his length, right? Just with his length and ability to guard guys on the wing. But that'll be a fun one coming up on Wednesday. And then, as we mentioned, Friday against the Magic. We'll have more about that later in the week. But Adam, let's go put a bow on it for this episode here, man. Great always catching up with you here on a Sunday. That will do it for this episode of Green with Envy. And coming up here, you're going to hear some music from our guy, the one and only Manakis. You'll hear some music from him and his band down here in Austin, Texas. They are Black Sheep Optimists. We'll see y'all later.
Peace. We love you.